we're so good. If somebody's in the same exact predicament we are in, to be like, it's okay, like, life is hard.
We give them
like,
compassion, nurturing, understanding.
So easily,
yes.
Right? But we can't do it to ourselves.
Hola, my name is Mercedes Young, and today life is happening. So I have an amazing guest. I can't wait to share, and probably on a selfish way, I took all the juice before we started. So today I'm going to introduce you to Carlos Garcia. I had the privilege to serve in the community at a youth event, and I was asking around who can we bring that is bilingual, that gets the challenges that we are dealing with, all of these kids that are coming into town with immigration, and everybody. Carlos Garcia, I'm like, how do I don't know this guy? But could be because I'm not a young person. But anyways, so today, Carlos, I want you to share your heart. We have a very, very powerful subject that I think it can impact and change your life and understand the why of why you see the world the way you do. Mm-hmm. But before we start, I would like to tell you that the opinions expressed by this podcast guest are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast that I'm going to host. And we encourage listeners to critically evaluate the information provided and seek professional advice when needed. And by the way, he is actually a licensed therapist. So, Carlos, with no further ado, would you please introduce yourself and let's get into it.
Well, thank you first for having me here, Mercedes. I love all the work that you're doing out in the community and just how you help people sort of thrive in their lives. So thank you for having me. So I'm a licensed psychologist. I have my own practice here in town. I also do coaching with executives and business owners around mindset and confidence and things like that. A little bit about my background. So I was born in Cuba, in Manzanillo, Cuba, and I came to the United States with my family when I was just 2 years old.
Grew up he's 29.
Yeah, exactly. 29. So I grew up in Miami, Florida, great place to sort of grow up. And then when I was right after high school, I joined the military. I was in the United States Marine Corps. I served in the infantry, and I did that for about 8 years. After I transitioned out of the Marine Corps, I served as a fireman and a paramedic here in Florida for about 7 years before I ended up going back to grad school for 6 years to get my doctorate degree, to really study human behavior and understand our mindset, understand the way that we show up in the world and what impacts us. And then in 2016, I moved to Tampa. I wanted to, I had traveled around a little bit and I was looking for a new place to set down some roots and found myself here. And it's been an absolute joy. And I've been so embraced by this community that I decided to stay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's a wonderful place.
It is. It really is.
One of the things that I do like about the United States is that you can actually go anywhere you want to. Like really, you can really look around like, where do I like it? Here. I love it. I love it. So today, the subject that we're going to be talking about is being enough. And that's a mouthful.
Sure.
So I ask you not to hold back and let's just dig into it.
Yeah.
So where would you say that your sense of not being enough comes from?
Yeah, Mercedes, before I get into that, I want to share a little story.
Okay.
So that the audience can get a sense of just how prevalent of an issue this is in our society. A couple of years ago, I was at Tony Robbins' seminar, Unleash the Power Within. And this was down in Miami at the American Airlines Arena. So, a big audience of people. It was about 16,000 people. And one of the questions that Tony asked was, who here owns their own business or works for themselves? And it seemed like about 70% of the people in that audience raised their hands, which tells you what? There's some go-getters in there, right? Like some really driven people.
Yes.
But the question he asked shortly thereafter was, who here has ever felt or is feeling like they're not enough?
Wow, a lot of hands went up, didn't it?
Mercedes, it felt like every hand in there went up, right? Including my own.
Yes.
Including my own.
Yes.
Now, as a psychologist, I wasn't shocked by that. What I was shocked by was the number of people that actually raised their hand and how prevalent this is in our society. The reason I wasn't shocked by it is because as a therapist, I had been working on this particular thing with my clients for many years. Now, I'll share a little bit for context for our audience as to where this may show up. Okay. If you think about when we first come into the world as babies, right? Initially, we're showered with love and unconditional regard. It's called unconditional love. We don't have to do anything to earn it, right?
Just cry.
Just cry.
Cry poop.
Right? And you get attention, you get what you need. But early in our development and in our parents' efforts to socialize us, we started to get a framework about how we were supposed to be. If you did all of the things that mommy and daddy wanted you to be, how they wanted you to behave, you got reinforcement, right? You got a hug, you got an attaboy or attagirl, you got a pat on the back, you got ice cream. But whenever you weren't meeting mommy and daddy's standards, you also got reinforcement. The withdrawal of love, a spanking, time out, right? So for a child, the most invaluable thing is to experience the love and validation of a parent. So a child is always going to seek that out. So what happens for a lot of us is in trying to live up to that framework, whenever we don't meet that expectation, we feel this really internal, just bad feeling about ourselves that's often sometimes wrapped around shame. Okay. So for example, the child that goes out to school, does really well and comes home with 5 A's and a B. And what do the parents say?
I can't believe you had a B.
I can't believe you had a B.
Right? They all could have been A, right?
Right. They forget about the effort that took for us to do really well.
Correct.
And so here's what happens for a lot of children is they keep putting out the effort, but every time they come back to the parents, there's a message of, you can do better. Why aren't you working harder? So over time, the message that evolves, at least at an unconscious level for children is, no matter how much I do, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough to win your love, right? Your appreciation.
Yes.
Eventually, it's not enough turns into what?
I'm not enough.
Right? Now, we get put in schools, and from the age of 5, we're made to compare ourselves to everyone around. Push yourself more. In sports, be better. In piano, be better. In ballet, be better. And you live this framework for the next at least 15 years of your life, right? And so that's one of the layers that I like people to understand is if you reflect back on your environment, if you were in this, especially if you had high achieving parents, or especially if you had very strict parents or very rigid parents, where the messages around good and bad and right and wrong are very strong, then that's what we internalize as children.
And sometimes I will add to that sometimes also the generations.
Yes.
Because, for example, I am a Generation X. And I was raised by my grandmother, that she is before the boomers.
Right.
She's 98 years old, still kicking.
Yeah,
so
I love it.
The thing is that because of what she went through of not having and lacking, she only got to 4th grade. She wanted the best for us because she believes that education will make room for everything. Because she always worked either as washing clothes, ironing, keeper, home keeper or building keeper, janitorial, what we would call it now. So she wanted the best for us.
Yeah.
But this was the thing, it's just coming up to me as you mentioned, as you talking, I don't remember, it's 4 of us and we all were A students pretty much, except one brother. But I got to tell you that I don't remember ever getting any rewards for good grades. But I can tell you the whoopings that my brother got for a C. That's the only thing I can remember.
Right.
We didn't get anything.
Right.
So here I grew up with that unconscious conversation. And I remember because both of my students were honor students.
Yeah.
So my daughter, they asked her in school, the teacher was telling her, oh, your mom's going to be so happy. And she's like, oh, no, in my home, you don't get nothing for A's.
Right.
But if I bring a C, oh, yeah, she will be here tomorrow.
You're saying something really massive there when we don't highlight the effort and the goodness. Because what you will see with a lot of people that struggle with this inner I'm not enough thing, when they are being enough, when they are crushing it, when they are being successful, oh, well, that's just what's expected of me.
Yes.
So they downplay and minimize the good in their life, but anything that's what is experienced as even the slightest of shortfalls, it's this deep punishment, this deep shame.
And and it goes at all levels because as a mother, I've always told my kids the greatest compliment that I can get is the day I die that you guys say my mom loved me. My mom was a good mother.
Yeah.
And I lived my life in my community, in my relationships with my husband, with my friends, and with everybody, serving with the homeless, that I wanted to make sure that the day I died, I'm remembered for being a good person.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
that drives me daily to do what I do. And I tell you that even when I have been very almost deadly sick, that was the one thing that would pull me out of that hole. And but I am looking now, just looking from a different lens. Like, I don't reward myself for, and one of the few things that I keep in my home for decoration, my son gave me years ago a ceramic thing that says "For the greatest mom," and that to me,
that's where it's at.
And it's funny because I literally sit down every night on that couch in front of that sign, and it pulls me out of what would a good mother do? What did a good person do? So even as a mother, even as an adult, even as a parent, you still want that affirmation.
Absolutely. I think every human has a deep need for that sort of connection and that internal feeling of goodness, of a positive regard towards ourselves, right? And so, here's the other layer to what we're talking about this this feeling of not enoughness. The other part is societal, right? So it might be what we heard at home, but the other part is societal. And we live in a culture that places such a big emphasis on success and achievement, right? Your value comes in what you can do. And when you stop doing, somehow you're not worth anything, right? So we start to receive that message from, the movies we watch, the media, schools, teachers, friends, everywhere.
The size, our weight, it's just everywhere.
Yeah. And so that pulls us into holding a narrative that I only have value when I am making it. I only have value when I am achieving. But it pulls us out of that place of understanding the absolute value we have just for being on this earth, for being human, for connecting, for being a mother, for being a son, all of those other parts of us that are beautiful.
That is interesting. So the sense of not being enough, you say, come from those formative years, from 0 to 15. And so what maintains this feeling within us? Because now, let's say we're in our 30s and still walking around, like a broken bird. I use that expression because
I like that.
A lot of women, as we get older and the body shape changes and the hormones do what they do. A friend of mine said to me, Mercedes, I'm afraid to be in a relationship with anybody because I feel like a broken bird. So it was heavy. It stayed with me. That was heavy to hear that.
So someone, if somebody I was working with would say that, here's where my mind goes immediately. Obviously, I know as a human, they are not broken. They didn't come into the world broken. None of us do. Well, unless we are unfortunately born with something in our DNA, right, that where we might have some challenges. But most of us come into the world not broken. So what I know about that person is they picked up on that message. They heard that somewhere, not even directly. Someone didn't say to you, you're a broken bird, but something in her environment made her feel like she was less than somehow. That's what I get curious about. That's the story I want to understand. And that's the story I want them to understand about themselves. So back to your question, what maintains that line of thinking? It's actually maintained by us in our thinking, in our, what I call our narratives and stories about ourselves, right? Because that person, you can say to that friend, you're not a broken bird, you're amazing. And they can read the books that tell them how awesome they are, and they can do the work, and they can go to the seminars. But no matter how much work they do, that narrative, that seed of that narrative still lives
deeply rooted.
Right. So here's a really beautiful story I share with a lot of, whenever I go and do speaking engagements or work with clients, so they can see the subtle nature and the nuanced way in which these things manifest and stay maintained in us. So here's a little girl going out to eat with her parents. Okay. They go out to eat every Friday, Mercedes, right? And she's about 7 or 8 years old. And on this particular Friday, the parents say, we're going to let you choose what you want to eat. So the little girl gets so excited, right? Oh my God, finally, my parents.
First.
Right? Dessert first. So she gets to the restaurant, opens the menu, and sees a pizza. And she goes, I want the pizza. And then mom, just sort of checking in how moms tend to do. Honey, are you sure? Why don't you get the burger? That's what you normally get. So the little girl stops and thinks about it for a minute. She goes, oh yeah, that's kind of true. But she sticks to her decision. She goes, no, the pizza. And then mom just, you're a mom, right? You just want to make sure that your kids are
you sure you want the whole pizza?
Are you sure you want the pizza?
Yeah.
You know the burger's the safe bet.
Yeah.
So the little girl stops, thinks about it one more time. But she sticks to her guns. And then the other parent chimes in. We're not getting the pizza. It's too big. You're not going to eat it all. It's going to be a waste of money. So
wow, that sounds like
probably like most
with my kids.
Exactly.
Yes.
So many of us can relate to some part of that story.
Yes.
So the child says, okay, I'll get the burger, right? And they move on. Now, in the grand scheme of things, nobody would look at that as this pivotal, traumatic, right? Like anything moment. But my question to you is, in that moment, what do you think that little girl believes about her ability to make decisions?
That she doesn't have the capacity to make good decisions.
Right. Maybe I need to check with other people. Maybe
yes, because I was going to say, and her decisions are not good enough.
Right.
And her decisions are not valued.
Right.
And then she's going to always doubt herself.
Sure. So here's how it maintains, right?
Especially
in that
when it
moment,
comes from the people that raise you, the people that you trust, the people that you depend on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like people that are very important to you.
Yes.
Now, most people can say, well, that child didn't take away that thought from that moment. And I say, maybe she didn't, but I know she felt something in that moment. What we also know is that parents are consistent in the way they parent over time. So that child probably heard that around school, whatever other extracurricular activities, how she dressed, a lot of other things. Not from an evil place from the parents. That's what I want people to understand.
Yeah, it's just everyday living.
It's just, right.
Yes.
This is, right, like our parents probably tried to parent a little bit better than they were parented. Right? They didn't have a deep, profound understanding of like psychology and childhood development.
Yes, because I know I was never asked what I want to eat. I can tell you that right
it's
now.
like you eat what was put on the plate.
That's it, pretty much. And if you don't want to eat it, you just won't eat.
So this child, do you imagine, as they're growing up, starts to develop a sense of questioning, a sense of self-doubt around her choices, around what she feels, around the decisions she makes. Do you think that impacts her self-esteem as she's growing up?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think that impacts the risk that she takes as she grows up?
Yes.
Right.
Definitely.
Do you think from that level of self-esteem that impacts the kind of friends that she gravitates to, the kind of partner she allows into her life?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now, a part of what I feel very passionate about talking about is therapy. And most people say, well, I didn't experience trauma in my life, so I don't need therapy. But this to me is a traumatic event.
As simple as it seems. And please don't scroll. It's getting gooder.
Right.
It's good. So, and we're going to come up with solutions. We're not going to leave you hanging and like, oh my God, woe is me. We're going to get there.
It's an invitation, right? To explore your background.
Yes.
So this is the sort of young lady that will end up in my office, right? Or riddled at some point later on in her life with deep anxiety, uncertainty. Why can't I ever feel good about myself? Well, because you were made to question everything about yourself, right?
Yes.
And so that's like that person up until they had the insight, oh, my environment planted this in me, blames themselves. I'm such a loser. I'm no good. I can never make decisions.
Yes.
Right? Because that voice from society or parents got internalized and we started to believe that it was our own story.
And even the tone, and let me share with you what's coming up for me. Sometimes I remember telling my kids, okay, whatever you decide, you got to live with it. But with a tone like if it was wrong, it was a wrong thing.
Beautiful.
We don't know what it was, but there was a wrongness around the tone of, okay,
a judgment.
Judgment.
Yes.
If you decide this, you got to live with the consequences of what you decide.
Perfectly said. That is another one of those nuanced things. Right? It's not just the message. How was the message delivered? What was the energy behind the message? What was the tone behind the message?
And one of the beauty of it is that I know those formative years are there, but then there are tools to unravel that.
Yes.
Because I have a 21-year-old and I said to him, whatever you decide, I'll back you up. Count on me.
Beautiful.
And I told him, because this is not about me. This is your
Beautiful.
journey, and I'm privileged to be part of it.
Love that.
So I told him, just you let me know,
Love that.
and I'll let you know my opinion. And even though, sometimes he's like, share something, and I said, can I give you feedback?
Yeah.
And that's a way of asking for permission.
Yeah.
And I told him, listen, I don't own the truth. This is just from my experiences, from my point of view, and the way I see the world.
Mm-hmm.
Based upon my experience, if you make this move, it's going to be received in such and such way.
Totally.
But at the end of the day, this is your stuff.
Yeah.
But the tone, this is your stuff.
Well, and
totally different than when they were growing up.
The tone that we hear is the tone that we adopt for ourselves.
Yes.
And I'll share a personal story with you of a moment where this really hit me. I was probably in my early to mid 20s, and I was in EMT school, so I had to go to class. And I realized that as I'm driving to the college, that I needed gas. And so I pull into the gas station and I go reach for my wallet. And my wallet wasn't there. So I start looking around the car and the wallet's not there. And in that moment, I realized I left it at home. So I say the following to myself: you effing idiot. Come on, get your shit together.
Wow, what a conversation to have with self. What is self-said?
And Mercedes, in that, mind you, I had spoken this way to myself a million times, 1,000 times a day. But I don't know what it was in that moment that I was like,
that you heard yourself.
Carlos.
Seriously now?
Mercedes, have you ever left anything at home?
I mean, for God.
Has any human out there left anything anywhere?
Oh my, no. And then you find out like 20 minutes down the road that you cannot even go back to fix it.
Right.
And yes.
But what captured me was like, why was I so vicious and toxic to myself in that moment? So unallowing, so uncompassionate. And that literally was what sent me on my journey to eventually find therapy. I started reading some books to understand, because there was a lot of anger in that as well. Yeah. But what I came to learn eventually was I grew up in a house with a very impatient father.
Oh,
okay. And he grew up with a very angry father himself. And,
so it was handout.
It was right. Like if you spilled water at the dinner table in my house, you got un pecozón, or you got, chastised, or you got called idiot, or get your shit together, or whatever it was. Right. Now I get it. My dad was probably coming from a place of wanting to instill discipline and strong character.
That's the thing that as a parent, it's like, we come from a good place. We really do, because we know at the end, at least conscious parents know that we do know that we are given the gift of this person, and that we're going to hand it right back to the world. Yes.
We're trying our best.
Yes.
I also grew up with a Cuban mother.
And there goes the town. I'm a Latin mom, so I can talk about
Hispanic mothers and Cuban mothers, they have a lot of opinions, right? They want to let you know how they feel about certain things. So I had somebody that, regardless of what I was doing, there was a message about, you can do it differently or better. Are those the shoes you're going to wear? Why don't you slow down when you're eating? Why don't you that? And so think about it. As a child, when you are learning to navigate the world, you are looking to those people close to you to understand how to do that. And if the message in this subtle way is always like, you're wrong, the way you're doing it is wrong, then that's what you start to believe. So for most of my 20s and well into my 30s, and even there's still this little nuance of it that I still struggle with, imposter syndrome and things like that. My self-esteem was garbage. I had zero confidence in myself. But now I understood why. It wasn't something inherent in me. It wasn't a problem that I had. It wasn't that I was broken. It wasn't, it's that, my early developmental years portrayed a message to me about who I was that I adopted as my own. And up until the moment where I realized, I can understand my story from a different place, that's when I was able to let go of the shame and the blame.
Let me ask you something, because I'm constantly looking for ways to growth and self-development in different areas of my life. But I have a question for you, because I always hear all these tapes and all this blogging, but I never hear about what should have I said instead? Because I'm still going to have grandkids one day. I still have, little kids around me.
Absolutely.
And as I'm thinking, I had a neighbor kid that came and brought me this beautiful feather and he made a pen out of it. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so cool. And then I said, let me show you mine. And when I showed him mine was a peacock feather. And he's like, oh my God, when you come back, would you please bring me one of those? But now I'm processing, like, it almost came out as I got one better.
Right.
So what would
Right.
you have said
Yeah.
in that case of when your mom, like, you sure those shoes? And because I remember when I
Yeah.
started letting my kids pick their clothes,
Yeah.
I was petrified.
Petrified.
Because
Right.
I'm like, they clowning. They don't know how
Right.
to match clothes. And oh my God, they going out with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So right. It's it.
Because you have a little one. So what
do.
would you have said?
Yeah. One of the things that because you mentioned so many good things there that I want to unwrap, right? And part of that is, recently I made this video about the self-help industry being last year we spent as Americans $13.8 billion on self-help, right? And if this was an industry that was working, we wouldn't need to keep coming back, doing more seminars, more books to keep finding that place within ourselves. What happens is that, as we talked about earlier, when we keep receiving that message from others in society that we're not enough, we develop this deep yearning inside to need to be enough. So what does that look like later on as adult? The one up, the let me show you how I can, the look at my certificate that I have now, look at the doctorate that I have, look at the car I drive, look at the house I live in. We're constantly seeking something external to us to lift us up so that we can feel that sense of connection again.
Okay.
But all that is that we've lost how to connect with ourselves in the beauty of who we are without all of those things. And when you start to realize your magic and your beauty without the stuff externally, that's when you start to show up in the world. Absolutely. That's when it doesn't matter if someone gives you a like, doesn't matter if anybody props you up. You don't even need to prop yourself up. You don't need it anymore because in here you feel you are enough.
Yes, and complete. And you know what? I got to tell you, we were just talking about that earlier, and how it can go into people think that you are a snob or a narcissist. And this is something that I always, I have friends that do blogging and they're like, oh my God, I got this person. They just totally trash me. And I say, don't answer to that. When you put yourself out there, you put yourself out there for different opinions. Does it really matter what they say? And I got to tell you, I had an experience. My daughter was, I think, in the 11th grade. And I would pick my kids from school, take them to school and pick them up. And I would pick up the little one first, and then I would pick up my daughter. And on the way home, she was crying and acting silly. And I say acting silly to me.
Right.
And because I grew up in a home that it was survival. I was never told that I did good, that I did great, that I was pretty, that I was never told none of that stuff. So I became very self-sufficient. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it because I said so, because I want to. And whether I did it or not, it didn't. I mean, I was raised by my grandmother and she was so busy moaning for the death of my mom and all that stuff. So I want you to know that my daughter says, I'm like, what are you tripping about? What are you crying? And she said, oh, you would have never understand because you had never dumped anybody. You had never been dumped by anybody.
Right.
At that moment, I realized that. And I did not realize how much my kids were watching my life. And I said, oh, you know what? You're right. Because it is my life. So if I don't think something's working out, I just get rid of it. Right. And she says, Mom, you love everything, but you attached to nothing. It took me 2 years to process. And I live my life by that. That was incredible. You can almost say prophetical.
Yes.
It took me 2 years to realize, look at my life. Like, I got people that come and go. I got things that I do. If I need to move from one country to another, I'm okay. But it's because I love everything, but I'm attached to nothing. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it works for me. Because I don't see the need to live in a world of attachments like that.
Well, it's not about good or bad. And I think that's where we need to shift as a society is, rarely is there anything in life that's absolutely
it's
100%
just your truth.
good. Right. And so, like, where are the places within the ways that I show up as a human that I just need to look at? Right. Because you're right. I didn't grow up with any, I remember.
You never got like trophy for being number 10.
On the day that I graduated with my doctorate degree, Mercedes, right? Here I had become a United States Marine, right? One of the most amazing fighting forces in the history of the United States. I had become a fireman. Now I was getting to be a doctor. On the day I graduated, we had a celebration. And un tío me estaba diciendo, he's like, I'm so proud of you. You have your life has been such a struggle, but you never stopped fighting. I'm so proud of you. And in that moment, my mom walked by and he grabs her by the arm and he goes, aren't you so proud of him? And my mom goes, psh, I still see him like that little boy running around peeing his pants.
Mi Dios.
Right?
Okay.
Now, for Hispanics out there, they get it, and they're probably laughing right now.
Like, well,
Other people are probably like, "Oh my God!" I could have gotten upset in that moment, but I just knew that that's kind of who she was. But we don't receive that sort of lifting up, right? Because it'll go to your head.
Yes, and it was so funny because I come to the United States as an adult. I'm raising my kids, and they have activities, and I will never forget that they're going to play soccer, and they come out, and they're like, "You guys are amazing," and they lost. Okay, so there I had to drop off my son one day, and I only was going to be able to be there like for the first 10 minutes and go to an appointment and come back.
Right.
And he was a striker.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, listen, if you don't strike at least 3 times, I'm not feeding you this evening. So you better earn this dinner. And we were joking around because we know each other. Because he will come home like, woman, where's my sandwich? He will like, you should not let your son talk to you like that. And I'm like, we okay.
That's your relationship.
That's our relationship. Yeah. So I walked away. Do you know when I came back, the parents were waiting to talk to me? All the moms. Like, we need to talk to you because we feel that you put a lot of pressure on your son and it's a team effort. It's not all dependent on him. And I'm like, did he do any goals? And they're like, yes, he did, but that's not the point. I said, well, if he doesn't, you feed him.
Right.
And I just grab him and we kept on going. But I'm just telling you, just coming from that place of like, what are the rewards for it? And not really celebrating the little things.
I think that comes back to your question, right? Well, like, if this isn't the way to do it, what
is
are
the right way
ways,
to do it?
Right?
Yes.
And here's a thing that I truly trust and believe is that we're pretty amazing beings when we come into the world already, and that there's nothing that we have to do to earn that sense of value, right? So what can potentially happen for a lot of us is that in our yearning to want to connect with our primary caretakers, with our families, our mothers, our fathers, our caretakers, we start to notice that they will only love us in certain conditions, right? And so what do you think the child's going to do? It's going to mold to that condition, right? And you said something really beautiful earlier about, this idea of like, oh, why are you feeling that way? Why are you crying? And I think that that's where, as parents, one of the biggest mistakes we can make is to not allow our children the opportunity to feel and express certain emotions. I grew up in a house, especially as a male
Latino.
You don't cry, you suck it up, you don't feel anything. But do you, as an adult, do you ever experience feelings of frustration about things in life?
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
Right. As children, as you're learning the world, right? As you're navigating life, are you going to experience frustration?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now imagine that gets robbed from you, gets taken from you every time as a child.
It's almost like taking from you the rights to be human.
Right. So what happens for most of us? We never develop an understanding or have modeled for us how to deal with tough emotions when we're little. Frustration, anger, sadness, guilt, shame, regret. We're told to bottle all of that stuff up. Some of us are even told, be careful about being too happy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we get to adulthood later on and life is handing us challenges and we're falling apart. Well, of course.
It's funny because I grew up with a nickname that my grandmother, the 98-year-old to this day, even when I'm not there, she refers to me as La Loquita, the crazy one, because I'm the one that will go and try things and do things in life and move to another country and do this and do that. And La Loquita. That's what she called me.
I was La Chipita.
La Chipita. So you were the candela. You pretty much you were fire. You were, yes.
So this is a perfect way to tie in all this stuff. That was the message that was imparted in me. I'm too much. I have too much energy. Settle down, go over there and sit down, right? Now, if I would have grown up a couple of years, maybe down the road, I might have been taken for an assessment for ADHD or something, right?
Yeah.
Let's not even go down there, excuse me. But La Chipita, right? Because I just had a lot of energy as a child. I had a lot of curiosity. I wanted to understand things. I wanted to touch things. I wanted to learn.
Being told was not enough for us.
But my environment told me I was too much. So how do you think that transplants into my belief about who I was? Right?
And you join a very structural environment right out of high school. So there goes another lid on that pot. Yeah. Yes, because it's very structured.
So for years, I've struggled with who is my true self, right? What if I allow that chipita to be me, to not worry about how people are going to judge them.
And by judgment or yes,
Totally.
yes.
So, the kid wants to go out of the house with 2 different color shoes, then let them, right? What we often do as parents is like, oh my God, that's going to be a reflection of me as a parent.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How is society going to see me? And again, we might fall into robbing that child of the opportunity to be creative and free and not care what other people think.
Yes, which is a very healthy place to be in the world.
Very healthy place.
Because there are people and there are people. I lived in so many countries that I didn't look nothing like them. You remember, like I told you, like I lived in Korea. Do you know how non-Korean I look? And I mean, I can't even buy a bra over there. Okay, so total different body shape, culture, skin color, language. Way of viewing the world. I mean, I come from a very independent home because it was survival to a country where women, when they got married back then, they were automatically dismissed from their job because when they get married, they are going to be a housewife.
Absolutely. They're
going to raise children. And I was like, oh, hell no. That was not me. So by default, what I did, I lived in Korea and I want you to not make a single Korean friend.
Yeah.
I absolutely judgment on that. I don't want none of that. So all of those things that leave an imprint in our life.
Right.
So how do we overcome feeling like we are not enough? How do we get to that place that we got that awareness?
Yeah.
And we walk around and break down for a while because we color the world with that crayon, everything we do, everywhere we go. And we end up at the seat with you when you ask me, how do you feel about that?
Right.
So what are the to-dos? Give me some of the tools to overcome this.
I'm biased because I'm a therapist. And so my first response is go to therapy. Go figure out
to even
your
bring
story.
the awareness, even, ruffle the old stuff because we walk with it. And don't even realize, you just automatically, based upon your example, just say, F. Carlos, you did this. Like, seriously, I got to tell you, when I came to the United States, I was in Kentucky and I was taking at night ESOL, English as a second language. And I grew up in a home and in a culture that everybody was hustling. Panamanians, we wear a mosca. That's what everybody, you better move faster than a fly. That's where I came from. Very city. And I remember that the teacher left something. And she, in front of the class, all of us were Latinos and one African in a military installation. And she hit her, she said, I'm so stupid. All of the Latinos might win. Because first of all, the word stupid for us is a dirty word. Second of all, you don't call yourself that. Like, who does that? So I remember going home that day. I couldn't even hear nothing else she said that day. And at the end of the class, I asked her, did you find what you were looking for? She said, no, I'm just so stupid. And it hit me again. I went home and I told my husband, the teacher called herself stupid. And he looked at me like, and?
Totally.
But I got to tell you that really made an imprint in my life. I remember her hairstyle and everything, like if it was just yesterday that she said that. And whenever I hear people, and that was one of the rules in my home, told the kids, we don't use the word stupid in this house because it never promotes health and wellness, and it never brings nothing good.
Totally.
But I was mortified that a human being, they had the rights to be grateful to be here, call themselves stupid in public, out loud.
What I can tell you is that teacher, when she was 6 months, a year, didn't believe herself to be stupid. Right? We don't come into the world angry. We don't come into the world critical. We don't come into the world judgmental about ourselves or even others. So my first response is get curious about your story. Get curious about your programming. Understand where your mindset comes from, right? Because the profound sort of liberation and freedom that you can feel when you finally realize, oh, that's why I think that way. That's why I always feel this way about this particular thing or this particular person. It's like gaining access to this like treasure chest. To better understand yourself, right? And so again, it's not this idea of like, oh, did I experience something traumatic? What's wrong with me? I'm broken.
It's the subtle messages.
Because it was the subtle messages. As a matter of fact, for most people that come into my office, some of them have like a big handful or maybe even one traumatic event that shifted everything. But more of our programming is from those subtle, nuanced things that we we're not aware of
Mm-hmm.
planted a seed in us to come and believe about who we are in the world,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And it can be something as simple, because I always remember I worked in Kentucky. When I was in Kentucky, there was this lady that she was at that time 47, and she weighed more than 300 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I have never seen somebody
Right.
that big in my life.
Right.
But I tell you what, I've never seen a woman that size so secure.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband was 20 years younger than her.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked at, never forget that, at a welding company.
Yeah.
So he was built and toasty, of course, because he was around fire all the time.
Yeah.
And she was very secure of herself. And we worked at the makeup counter. And I remember asking Rhonda, how long you guys been married? She's like, about 14 years. And I'm thinking, Lord Jesus, she got this guy really, really young.
Yeah.
But how assured of herself she was.
Sure.
Because she didn't had a size conversation. And I was always watching what I eat, make sure I'm never more than a size 2.
Yeah.
And she freed me from that.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. And again, like you say, those little subtle messages, because she didn't tell me that.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't tell me I'm happy where I am. None of that stuff. Right. It was just her way of being. She just lived it. And after that, I was like, shoot, if Rhonda can do it, I can get whoever I want. And God knows I did. Totally. But it was just, and even surrounding ourselves with healthy people. Mm-hmm. One of the things that as humans we tend to do is look at people that are like-minded.
Yeah.
We attract them. Sure. And that can be good and that can be really bad.
Absolutely.
Because I want people that stretch me to be better. Mm-hmm. I want people that call me out on my stuff. Yeah. I want people like, you can do better than that. What are you doing? I have a friend that she literally, we asked, what the fuck are you thinking? And I said, girl, she said, no. I want to repeat it to you and I'm going to give it to you with fries. Yeah. And I have 3 people in my life that are my accountability friends. And when I call them with my ideas or my craziness, they're like, yeah, I can see why you will do that. I can see, but I don't know about this and that. Right. And I asked my husband, I need you to love me right. I need you to be, I don't want your loving husband right now. I need judgment. I'm asking you because this is your area of expertise and I want your point of view. So I'm giving you permission to just go ahead and tell me.
Well, the beautiful thing about this process of, and again, whether it's, a book that you read or you go to therapy or you go to a past, whatever that process looks like for you, because it's different, everyone's journey is a little bit different, but it needs to be a journey of self-exploration, right? And what will, start to happen for that person is that they will start to, at some point, break away from those old stories and narratives, right? Those old versions of you that those old stories that you believe about who you are, which puts you in a position to now develop new stories. Because if all that other stuff was garbage, if all that was a lie, if all that was conditioning, then who really am I? And that can be a little bit scary at first because you're standing on this ground that feels very shaky. And it's like, well, this is who I always believed myself to be. Yes. If that's not real, that can feel very unnerving. Yes. But it can also feel very empowering because now you get to decide what you want to be, what your story needs to be. Yes. Right? Yes. And I think once we start to let go of that, the unhealthy parts of our ego that need you to tell me that I'm okay or society to tell me I'm okay, then you can start to hear. Now you can start to listen. Now you're more open to feedback because you're not going to put up a wall or a defense mechanism because, oh my God, my ego can't stand that. It's too fragile. Yes. It's too fragile.
You're judging me. What are you calling me?
So I've worked with a lot of CEOs of really big companies whose egos are so fragile. They can't even hear the input that I may have to help them get unstuck.
And it's amazing how we learn to navigate life and camouflage that. Because at that level, actually, because most of my circle is with CEOs, you will never think. I was talking to somebody who's well renowned in the country, and he decided to grow a beard. So when I went to hug him with my nice soft skin and his pricky face, he pricked my face, and I'm like, "Oh my God, you need to shave! I don't know where you got this new look thing going on, but you're about to give me a rash." Yeah. And I know him enough to joke around with him. I want you to know. He shaved it. I was not joking about the fact that if you got a beard, please don't hug me. And I tell all my friends that got a beard, like, listen, we're going to just have to, love like that and all that fun stuff. But I mean, he shaved. Yeah. And it was funny because the following time that I saw him, he's like, oh, you can hug me now. And I'm like, I was just kidding. You actually look very eloquent with it. I just was not going to hug you.
I love it.
But I got to tell you that just like this, and it's somebody like really, really, really up there, nationwide, and it was interesting, even huge in the military ranking and all the time. I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Sure.
You know, and with me, I got people that tell me, oh, Mercedes, don't do this. Or when I wear my hair curly, Latinos, Mercedes, why don't you straighten up your hair? You know that you don't look like us.
Yeah.
And I said, what is us?
Yeah.
This is what I like.
Totally.
This is where I am in life.
Right.
It is easy. And this is what I do.
Which, leads me to, this leads me to my second point, my sort of second response to your question of how do we start breaking away from some of this? Again, this is sort of a societal and generational thing, but here's a perfect example, Mercedes. My younger sister, has a daughter now that's 1 month older than my son. Right. And so what a perfect place to start comparing. How much are they sleeping? How much milk are they drinking? When are they walking? Are they doing this yet? Are they doing that yet? Right. All on achievement based. Right. I mean, that's what we're trying to assess here.
Yeah.
Right. Why do we need to be comparing these different children?
Different children, like,
but it's not just unique. There, right.
Yes.
Then they go to daycare. Then they go to kindergarten.
That's true.
And then at least until you're a senior. Now we have the society telling us how you dress, what you do.
Yes.
Are you getting the good grades? Are you number one? Are you being the best?
Yes.
There's this recent research article that I came across, and it shows that children up until the age of 4 or 5 in this country are very compassionate. Right? Like if you've ever seen a little child when they're playing with kids and one of them one of them falls, the other one will go and make like to see. That's instinctual.
That's instinctual. Yes.
But then we put them into school and we're telling them, you need to be the best. Worry about yourself.
Yes.
Now they become selfish. Now they're worried constantly about how they are perceived based on everyone else. So obviously we make it to adulthood and we care about every single thing that every other person has to say about us. And we attach our sense of value and purpose based on how people are responding to us. And what I'm learning now later in life, and it can help with some of this too, is everyone is simply a walking projection of their own story. What do I mean by that? Let's say you and I sit here and we have probably experiences with very different fathers, right? Let's say you grew up with a very loving father, and here's another person who grew up with a very toxic father. And then there's the father that I told you. And a man walks into the room and just says hi and greets us and hope you have a nice day, and then walks away. That person that grew up with a very loving father is going to be like, oh my God, that was so generous and kind. The person that grew up with a toxic father, what was that guy's problem?
Yes. What's good about this day?
I might say like, oh, did you see that guy judging my jacket?
Wow. Yes.
Right? So our perception is colored by those things in our environment.
Yes.
So every human being that you encounter every day has lenses that they're wearing that's their experience.
Yes.
So their judgment of you is not actually about you.
No, it's their stuff. You know, it's interesting. Now that you said that, so, with the immigration issues that we having, not issues, but we're having a lot of immigrants coming. And please forgive me, the word issue was not meant to be used in this content. So I go to homeless shelters and I'm seeing more Latinos and Hispanics in homeless shelters. Last year, 8 months ago, about a year ago, it was not one. And now, little by little, now more coming. So when I bring food, I'm mindful of that, things that they like. So it was really interesting because I called the lady who's in charge of the facility and hey, I'm bringing this and this and that. In this particular time, I brought about 50 meals that were very nice, fancy salad with a salmon steak, right? And a bottle of water. When I dropped it off, oh my God, everybody was really excited. This lady with her daughter from Venezuela said to me, I can't believe that I'm in a homeless shelters to eat this because I used to watch it on TV.
Wow.
But I never thought that I would come to this country and eat this meal in this environment. And I said, oh my God, enjoying. She started crying. So when I'm going to the car, another lady comes to me, Latina as well, because they can relate. And she said to me, why are you doing this? And I said, what are you talking about? I really was not connecting. And I said, what are you talking about? She says, why are you bringing this food to us? And she was very stern with her tone. I said, Because God has given me the privilege to be able to do that. You have
Yeah.
no idea what this
Beautiful.
does for me.
Right.
I said, it would be very selfish on my
Right.
part to have all these meals
Yeah.
and I'm going to sit here and enjoy my salad
Yeah.
when I know the places
Yeah.
that people need
Sure.
to have a salad.
Sure.
And she says to me, do they pay you for this? I said, no, honey, I do it from my heart.
Right.
And I walked out of there a little ruffled.
A little perturbed. Yeah.
And
sure,
I was like,
sure.
she could have said thank you.
Right.
What was that about?
Right.
And then when I went back, she says, oh, my clothes was all stolen and this and this and that. And I said, oh, great. Let me see what I can do. And I will come back in 2 days. Give me 2 days to come back. And when I went back, I was asking for her and they said, Mercedes, she's gone. She's not here. And I said, where did she go? You guys know? They like, I don't know what you told her, but she went and applied for a job and got it in 2 days. I said, really? They like, yeah, I don't know what it was because she was very feisty, but something happened. And again, planting those seeds.
Right.
So I think, yes, dealing with us, I believe in therapy.
Sure.
I've been going to therapy forever and got my kids into therapy from the time they were 12.
Totally.
And I told them whatever I did it from my heart. And if you need to tell somebody how you feel about that, I'm willing to pay $75 an hour.
I love
but that was back then.
Right.
But my point is that even still giving with that awareness to really work in shifting the narrative and being a thoughtful observer of ourselves, because that day you heard Carlos talking to Carlos. Right. You heard it that day, and I'm sure you made a decision because that probably stayed with you. Like, what was like really?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you expect anybody to be nice to you when you're that horrible to yourself, right?
So, well, I love what you just said, because I'm sure anybody that's listening to this that may have this struggle with the not enoughness.
Yes.
I'm going to take a stab in the dark here, but I have a lot of confidence that I'm going to speak to a lot of them right now. If they have a friend or a loved one in a similar challenging situation, I know that there's something within you that in a heartbeat will find forgiveness, compassion, or empathy for someone else.
Yes.
We're so good. If somebody's in the same exact predicament we are in, to be like, it's okay, like, life is hard.
We give them
like,
compassion, nurturing, understanding.
So easily,
yes.
Right? But we can't do it to ourselves. And that was one of the things that led me to this understanding of the not enoughness.
Yes.
The clients that were coming to see me, every single one of them, so empathic, so loving, so compassionate, but they couldn't turn it inward towards themselves. And that was fascinating to me. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I can relate also, because I could give you the best advice and I can be so forgiving of everyone.
And be hard on yourself.
So harsh on myself.
Yes.
And I think that's what then, like, okay, where does this harshness come from? How can I come to understand this part of me a little bit better? Because I do want to be able to give myself the same freedom, the same love, the same sort of allowing space that I give everybody else, right? Because that compassion lives inside all of us.
Yes, absolutely. It's really interesting. When I go to meditation, I remember about 10 years ago, working in the community, that's the side of me that people know. Right. But they did not know, unless they were really on my circle, how strict I was with myself, right? Because I live in a home of just expectations, period. No rewards, just expectations. And I would never forget that the lady who was leading the meditation said to me, Mercedes, go to my channel and there is a meditation on speaking to the child within you. That changed everything for me. I mean, I heard myself being not nice to me. And when I tell you every now and again, that one in the book, The Mastery of Love. After the Bible, that's the book that I read every year. Right. The Mastery of Love.
Love it.
And it is from the same guy that wrote the 4 Agreements. But when I tell you, you will learn about everything we've been talking about, how toxic we are, where does it come from, how do we infect it so we create this infections in the world, and how to come out of that.
Totally.
Out of that, because that's the key, how to come out of that. Because honestly, when I heard that meditation, so this is when any of my friends like, oh, I'm going to do this, and they talking about how they be into themselves. Sure. I said, you know what? Will you give that advice to your daughter?
Yeah. There's this really powerful visualization exercise that I help a lot of my clients go through. And it's to get in touch with that inner child.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that's so important, Mercedes, I mean, you saw what a profound value it had in your life,
Yes.
is because I truly believe that inside all of us, there's this little child that is like yearning to be seen,
Mm-hmm.
to just be heard,
Mm-hmm.
to be acknowledged,
Mm-hmm.
to not have any expectations placed on them to be any different than
Mm-hmm.
exactly how they are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think if most of us had that very welcoming, loving environment growing up, where there wasn't all these expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we were allowed to just kind of be ourselves and be loved in that place,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't be so hungry for validation as adults.
And do all the crazy things that we do
All
to
of
get
the
it.
absolutely absurd things that we do to try and get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember when I used to watch this show. What was this show that you will get $1 million and people will eat crazy things?
Oh,
and,
like Fear Factor.
Yes, that was the show.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't speak that much English then, but I know that people eating scorpions and stuff was,
Right.
it was,
like, this is absurd.
and I was like, and I remember saying,
Yeah.
why are they doing that?
Right.
Why are they doing that?
Right.
Why are they eating this thing? Why are they walking around naked in the jungle with no shoes?
Yeah.
Like, who gets up in the morning and does that? Like what's
You're like, keep your money.
I mean, like this and that. And it's funny because now one of my jokes is like, not even $1 million will get me to do that.
Right.
And it really comes from that premises.
Yeah.
Like, what will people do to be approved, to be loved, to be, I mean, like, really?
Right. Well, we see it. We see it on social media.
Mhm.
We see what people are doing.
God.
Right. We see how the trends and the things and the right, like, and not just that, but what starts to happen when we feel like we're not getting it, right? The things that we turn to, the ways that we obsess over it. And so, you know, I know that anybody that struggles with substance abuse, I truly feel that it's a part of that. It's like we've numbed ourselves out to feeling any sort of experiences in life, or you know, but not just substances, food.
Yes, major. The environment where I am, the circle where I am, you see it with food, and you see it with work. And it's amazing to me because one of the things that I learned coming here, and I used to say the Holy Spirit don't show up until we got food, because everything we do, we have to have food. So what I personally do in the environments that I lead and the associations and the things that I'm in, even with my company, I always have music.
Love it.
I just have music and things to drink. I always have bottles of water, but I always have music. And it's intentional, and it's amazing to watch how in 2 hours, when people have that rhythm and that energy that we create in the music, people don't be looking for food. The event that we did, if I tell you that, you remember all the music and the vibe and every kid that was coming in, we had a whole road of people high-fiving and celebrating. We glad you came.
Great event.
We had 16 pizzas left because it was a 2 hours event, and it was so intense. And every pause with music and the vibe, the
Our
people were
attention was not on food.
No, it
it
wasn't. Did you eat pizza?
No.
Yes, that's my point.
Totally.
And I, because of my
But you know what? I was fed.
Yes.
I was fed with connections. I was fed with motivation and inspiration from all the speakers, the people talking.
Yes. And I will tell you that day that, and I just want to share this because I believe that we have to have a paycheck and a paycheck of the heart. That day, there was a young man there with a gun that we didn't know. That day, there were 2 people that have just come out of being Baker active. One the day before and another one 2 days prior. And another one that she has made a decision that her life was not worth anything. And when you share about your different, just again, so you can see the different things that connect with people. So what I encourage you is to be transparent and be vulnerable, because there's so much power in that.
So much.
And that day, the aunt called me and said, you will not believe, but you know what they connected with? The fact that you spoke about your different shifts in career, and they feel that if I have all these talents, who am I really? What do I really do? Where do I really fit? And it's almost like you gave them permission to move from here to there. So we saved lives that day.
Yeah.
We did.
Vulnerability.
Yes.
In this process of all of these things that we've talked about, you know, even bringing back the story of that day of Tony Robbins, all of these people looking for that next thing to feel okay in the world. You know, this idea of how we learn to bottle up all of our emotions. You know, in a lot of the talks I do, I'll ask obviously very ironic question to the audience. And it's like, who in here has never failed at anything? And obviously not a hand up.
Not a hand up.
Right?
No.
Right? Who's never struggled in here? And so I say, oh, that's interesting. So every one of us has struggled.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because part of the human condition is you're going to struggle. You're going to experience challenges. You're going to experience sadness. You're going to experience defeat. You're going to experience shame. It's a part of being human.
Yes.
Now, it's what we do with that that has become problematic.
Mm-hmm.
We've learned to hide behind that shame.
Mm-hmm.
We've learned to put on a mask every day when we step out into the world because we don't want other people to judge us so that we feel that shame more deeply. But what I've started to recognize is when we have these conversations, when we connect on the fact that we struggle, we invite a conversation and an allowing for other people to acknowledge their own struggle from a place of like okayness.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so my thing over the last handful of years is like, how can I start to walk in more vulnerability, start taking off my mask to invite that conversation? Because, you know, if you've ever been to a party or a thing, you're sitting around talking and someone shares something really vulnerable, at first everyone's like, ooh, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like, it's a ticket, it's a permission.
Yes.
Because then that other person will feel like really okay, right? They'll feel really seen and be like, oh my God, that happened to me too.
Yes.
And it's in that place where we start to have these profound connections around vulnerability.
And breakthroughs. And I will tell you that I started the year with a podcast on goals. And after that, I have unraveled different podcasts that got to do with breakthroughs and breakdowns, awareness, breakdowns, breakthrough. And you guys are going to see this podcast coming. But one of the things that by the time this come out is going to be February, and it's still time to maybe give to yourself the challenge of discovering yourself as a Valentine's gift to you.
I love it.
Yes, you can give that to yourself, and that will be your love gift.
I love it.
And because it's interesting to see some of the things like you were talking about the childhood from 0 to 15.
Yep.
And I remember saying to my dad, God, you're just like your father. Of course she is just like her father. You know, even when she wasn't speaking, those things were, you know, that was all things that were imparted into her. And with my son, I'm like, God, this boy is just like me. and I have my friends sometimes like, don't you think he need a spank? And I'm like, am I trying to beat myself out of him? That's not going to work.
Right.
Because I know how I am and I am okay with how I am and with who I am. Yeah. And it's easy to set goals and to live your life from that place of wholeness and giving yourself permission, like, you know what, I'm okay.
I'm okay.
I had an exercise, the simplest exercise. And I remember at the time it drove me nuts. I had a therapist that asked me, Mercedes, do you like ice cream? I said, man, I'm not an ice cream person kind of, but she said, do you like, what kind of ice cream you like? I said, I like vanilla ice cream if I were to pick one.
Right.
And then she said, well, do you like chocolate ice cream? I said, no, I don't like chocolate ice cream. Why don't you like chocolate ice cream? Because it's bitter. Why don't you like chocolate? And she went on for about 30 times. And now she finally really got the facade out of me and my protection, the mask. And I said, because I like vanilla ice cream, because I said so. She said, that's why you like vanilla ice cream. And that's enough.
Beautiful.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
It was enough. And I'm like, oh my God. So it was
powerful.
enough. Yeah. So I would ask you to please share something with the audience. Yeah. I know this is going to be a good seed that is going to land on good soil. So what would you say to that 25, 30-year-old person that is sitting with you and in the discovery of why they are the way they are and why it's not working out?
Yeah.
Yes. What would you say?
You know, I was working with this one client once who really struggled with this idea of who she was in the world and being enough. And we were sort of, she said, you know, I can remember there was a time really early on. She goes, I have these faint memories where I was like super curious and like, I'd like to, you know, just look at everything and jump off the couch. And I said, yeah, take me back there. If you were to give me a word to describe that child, what would it be? And she said, courageous. And I said, so that lives in you. That was a part of you someday. Now, you know, this was somebody that had grown up in a pretty toxic home environment. So I saw how it got parented out of her. Right. But what I would say to everyone out there is you came into this world perfect.
Yes.
Whether chispa whether curious, whether energetic, whether chill and reserved, whatever that version was. If you had an environment, and that means that our parents had to have had the same environment, right? This is just sort of generational. But if we had the environment that fostered that in us, you would not question any part of who you are right now. You would embrace every version of who you are, right? So the message is, I invite folks to bring some curiosity to their story, to the way you think.
I like that.
Because if that sets you on a journey, it is the most beautiful journey you will ever take. Yes. I can sit here now, I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about my son and the father that I get to be for him, and how patient I can be and how allowing I can be. And I realized if I hadn't have done all of the hard work, the therapy, the looking at my anger, the looking at my self-doubt, the looking at all of the things that didn't serve me in life, I could not be this beautiful father for him or my friend, or I couldn't be a friend. I couldn't be the kind of husband I am. I couldn't be the kind of therapist that I am.
Yeah.
And so even if not just for us, but for the people that we can become, to then invite others to do that work as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful said. And you know what, guys? Life is happening. That's why we call it It's Happening. Thank you so much, Carlos. Thank you for being open.
Yes.
And guys, I hope that you got a tool, something that you can take with you and shift, because you do deserve to have an amazing life. Have a great one.